Well, good morning, our beloveds. We have been asked a non-linear question, but the answer must be in a linear language. And therein lies the difficulty in expressing what energy looks and feels like. You all really do want to understand how everything can be happening in the now, but it appears linearly. The point of consciousness can only be in one place at one time, which is the now. However, everything is occurring simultaneously. So let's give an example whereby we put you in the middle or the center of a wheel. You are at a space where you can turn 360 degrees. Now pretend that outer rim of that wheel consisted of or expressed the entirety of your life. And similar to a dial on any object, you can turn it all the way to the right or all the way to the left, meaning that you can tune into each millisecond by the mere shift of a dial and be experiencing it live. But the other piece that is so important to understand is that the time ripple effect is also real, meaning that when you heal your trauma now, when you go back in time, it also heals it all the way back and heals it all the way forward. So even though something happens right now, it ripples backwards and forwards in time. Not the answer our another was expecting based on her interpretation of the visuals that we are giving her as we channel. So when you think that you know the answer, you can be assured that you don't, because a knowing is simply based on the current temperature, the current aspects, the current expressions. The knowing that you would have in this moment in time would differ if the energetic expression around you was dramatically changed. Your interpretation of your circumstance depends not only on your own experience, but that of the collective. Let that seep in wherever you are at. Your community affects and impacts you. Your region affects and impacts you. Your vibration is not your own. It is a collective experience. And when you change your past, it ripples forward. And when you change your past, it ripples forward in other people's lives. It matters. So just pretend that your life was a videotape that, based on certain probabilities, would play itself out in a particular way. When you all are highly predictable, there's primarily one timeline. because we can with great assurance predict how you will behave going forward, as well as others. Does that make sense? So we can have greater certainty in what this will look like. So if you were to go back and forth in time, you would know. However, in times like right now, where there is much uncertainty, each decision that does not follow the probabilistic expectation, if you will, matters, because with each shift, it does create a different active timeline versus inactive or less likely timeline. And because everything is shifting and there are multiple timelines playing out at any given time until a timeline fizzles out, meaning there's just no more interest from any parties, then you will see an end, but the rest continue on, much like a shooting star that just goes off in a direction and a different shooting star in a different direction. The life that you are living right now is not your life. It is just the current one that your consciousness is experiencing. You have different timelines with different experiences and players, and they may be those based upon less likely or more likely probabilistic outcomes within your particular experience as well as others. So for example, that boy or that girl that you dated, what if you had married them instead of not? Well, what would that have looked like? Well, what if you had chosen to have children versus not? What would that have looked like? Well, what if you had taken that job in New York City versus Montana State? What would that look like? Your lives are not one singular point. So what if all of your choices and all of your experiences and all of your wishes and dreams and nots, what if they were all being played out at the same time to figure out the most optimal way for choosing, and not with a desired outcome, but with the desired expression of either being love or hate, experiencing sharing versus grabbing from one another, experiencing World War III versus Kumbaya. They're all playing out at all moments, every moment. There is no singular expression as you seem to think exists. Living within the now means not sharing or caring or worrying. It just simply is, here I am as a point of consciousness, expressing and experiencing this moment exactly as it is. And nothing else, no judgment, no worry, no shame. It just is. So you can turn that dial right and left, forward and back, to the point in the future versus the point in the back. But they are still only probabilistic outcomes based on certain experiences and expressions. But what if you were in a different timeline, wanting to go backwards and forwards in time? Do you understand? It's not only this lifetime as you see it and know it, it is in others as well, where you chose differently, where others chose differently. What if you chose not to incarnate? What if you chose to abort at a very young age? There's so many different shaming techniques that have been placed upon you all to tell you that you're not doing it right. But what if there's not one singular experience? And so you're never doing it right or wrong. You're just doing it all. Let that one sink in and just marinate for a bit, because it's a deep, deep question within this rabbit hole that is called exploring your consciousness and knowing that there are no answers to the infinite series of questions that you all could ask, because there is nothing, and yet all is one. Let that sit and marinate for a day or two before you move on to your next query. And so it is. Namaste.